A very good evening and welcome to the India Development Debate. I'm Tamanna Inamdar. Today on the show, we're going to tackle the Indo-Russia relationship first up on a day which is very crucial for both countries and their bilateral trade. Well, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia, is in India, has met with Prime Minister Modi, and that summit took place today. It is also the inaugural 2+2 dialogue where foreign ministers and defense ministers of both sides talk to each other. Now, important to remember that this is Putin's second visit only since the COVID-19 pandemic and comes at a time when Russia wants to stabilize and continue to woo a very close partner in India who is also being courted by the United States. It's in the backdrop of defense deals and a deal being talked about between India and Russia for an S-400 system that America is not too happy with. The other context to remember is Russia's ties with China, which could strain their relationship with India. So we're going to make sense of all of these dynamics. But before that, let's listen in to the opening comments by both the leaders today.
कोविड की चुनौतियों के बावजूद भारत और रूस के संबंधों की रफ्तार में कोई बदलाव नहीं आया है। हमारी स्पेशल एंड प्रिविलेज स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप निरंतर मजबूत होती गई है। कोविड के खिलाफ लड़ाई में भी दोनों देशों के बीच बेहतरीन सहयोग रहा, चाहे वैक्सीन ट्रायल्स और उत्पादन में हो, मानवीय सहायता के लिए हो या एक दूसरे के नागरिकों की देश वापसी के लिए हो। एक्सेलेंसी, वर्ष 2021 हमारे द्विपक्षीय संबंधों के लिए कई मायनों में महत्वपूर्ण है। इस वर्ष 1971 की ट्रीटी ऑफ पीस, फ्रेंडशिप एंड कोऑपरेशन के 5 दशक और हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप के 2 दशक पूरे हो रहे हैं। इस विशेष वर्ष में आपके साथ फिर मिल पाना मेरे लिए हर्ष की बात है, क्योंकि हमारी स्ट्रेटेजिक पार्टनरशिप में पिछले 20 वर्षों में जो उल्लेखनीय प्रगति हुई है, उसके मुख्य सूत्रधार आप ही रहे हैं।
Мы проводим саммиты на высшем уровне регулярно, каждый год, поочередно и в Индии, и в России.
We are holding summits every year, taking turns in India and in Russia.
К сожалению, в прошлом году мы пропустили из-за пандемии.
Unfortunately, we had to skip last year because of the pandemic.
Но все равно наша очередь приезжать в Индию, я благодарю вас за приглашение.
Still, it is our turn to travel to India, so I'd like to thank you for your invitation.
Мы относимся к Индии как к великой державе, с дружественным нам народом и с замечательной предысторией наших отношений.
We perceive India as a great power, a friendly nation, and a time-tested friend.
To speak more on this, I'm joined now by Dr. Kanwal Sibal. He's a former Indian ambassador to Russia. Manoj Joshi, distinguished fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, also with us today, as is PK Chakravorty, Major General, retired and defense expert, speaking with us today. Welcome to all of you and thank you so much for joining us on the India Development Debate. Dr. Sibal, let me come to you first for your opening comments on how crucial really this visit is.
Well, it is very important because we could not have this summit last year because of COVID. Although from the year 2000, there have been annual summits with Russia. And this is the only country with which we have annual summits. This tradition was broken, and that gave rise to speculation that maybe all was not well with the India-Russia ties, because there are some differences that have now surfaced with regard to Afghanistan, the Taliban, Pakistan, the Indo-Pacific, the Quad, our relations with the United States. And at the same time, Russia has become very close to China strategically. In fact, those ties have become deeper over the years as a reaction to United States and European pressure on Russia, sanctions on Russia, and closing doors to Russia westwards, leaving Russia no choice but to turn eastwards and come closer to China, which raises some concerns for us. Now that this summit is going to take place, both sides will have an occasion to share each other's concerns and remove some, how should I say, doubts that have arisen with regard to the tenacity, the historical tenacity of this relationship, which has withstood changes in the international system over the years and has actually shown remarkable stability. Russia still remains India's most prominent defense partner. It is increasingly becoming an important energy partner. It's the only country with which India has concrete, substantial cooperation in the nuclear sector. The Russians do transfer technologies to us, which others don't, as for example, the lease of the nuclear-propelled submarine, and the second one that would be coming. The trade ties are not very good, just about $10 billion, which is totally insufficient. And I think they would be focused on this during this meeting, especially what was decided at Vladivostok when Prime Minister Modi was the chief guest there a couple of years ago, to open up the Vladivostok-Chennai corridor and India's investments in Russia's Far East, where most of its oil and gas resources lie. So on the energy side, there are good prospects. And once this corridor starts working, I think then Russia's own views on the Indo-Pacific will begin to change, because we think Russia is as much an Indo-Pacific power as any other country. And they should have no doubts about our commitment to an open and inclusive Indo-Pacific.
Sure. It sounds like also a tough balancing act. Let me get in Manoj Joshi on this perspective. The Indo-Russia relationship over the last few years especially has been looked at as an either-or situation when compared to the increasing proximity between India and the United States. And now you have the prominence of Quad in the mix as well. Do you think it's a tough balancing act for India?
No, I think it was a tough balancing act, but I think India has got much more clarity about the global situation now. And I think, for example, the Quad, now we know, is distinctly not a security alliance. For the security, they have the AUKUS. So that is clearly a UK, USA, Australia outfit. And I think the Russians and the Chinese can be reassured that we are not a party to any kind of a military alliance against them. The Russians were worried about the Indo-Pacific. The second thing is that Afghanistan, meaning Afghanistan, the US withdrawal from there has sent shockwaves all over the place. And I think amongst those shockwaves are what we are witnessing, the kind of re-emergence of Iran. And the re-emergence of Iran is shaking up things in the entire Gulf area. And India has very quietly moved towards Russia, accepted a certain, partnership with Russia in dealing with the Taliban in Afghanistan, especially since both of us, Russians and the Indians, are very suspicious of the Haqqani network, which is really running the show for the Taliban. And I think there is a certain coincidence of interest between us and Russia. The point I'm trying to make is that geopolitical developments right now, meaning post-Afghanistan, are such that the relevance of the India-Russia friendship has become sharper. The relevance of our strategic ties has become sharper. And if you look at the United States, you see Afghanistan as a stumble, as a major stumble. And we're also seeing with the AUKUS that they are moving in a different direction from the one that we had anticipated with them. So all in all, I'm trying to get at is that geopolitics is again tightening the relationship, which had become, as Mr. Sibal said, somewhat loose, had become looser in this thing, but there are things to work on, particularly trade.
trade, of course, and the China question still hovers, but I want to shift focus for a minute on the defense deals, because that's always been the centerpiece, so to speak, of the Indo-Russian relationship. And Major General Chakravorty, let me come to you on that. So the S-400 deal on the table. On the other hand, you have a 5,000 crore deal for, Kalashnikovs, the JV there, probably being made in Uttar Pradesh. And all of this in the backdrop of Washington reiterating that they have not decided on any exceptions for Katsa. So they are pretty much saying that those who do business with Russia on defense deals will pay the price, and India has to withstand that. How do you see this developing?
I don't think the Americans would really jump and straight away impose sanctions on India. Ambassador Sibal and Manoj Joshi have clearly said, let me put it very clearly, we haven't bought less weapons from the United States. It's over $15 billion, which is not a small amount. I mean, I don't want to name. I myself have been involved with the ANTPQ-37 radars. I'm talking about the Army. I'm not talking about the Air Force, which are the bigger deals. I was involved with almost $800 million, this ultralight howitzers, which also involves the Chinook helicopters coming in. So therefore, the Americans have got a lot to see in India. I mean, if you talk in terms of weaponry, they are all roaming around here. Lockheed Martin, Boeing, I mean, name a company, Northrop Grumman, they are all roaming around over here. And if they have to see a future in their weapons industry, which is their main industry, they cannot impose sanctions on India. Now, coming to these two issues which you just referred, firstly, the S-400. Well, S-400, the Americans have the Patriots. It's not an open thing, and we have strategic autonomy, which I would not like to dwell on with such experts sitting, beside me and with whom I have interacted so deeply. I'll put it very clearly, you need a state-of-the-art weapon system, and China already has 3 such units. We are getting 5, and we need them. How do you today defend your skies? Against drones, against what you call state-of-the-art fighters, against all sorts of things happening in the air. And next, to put it very clearly, the next you brought out about small arms. We have been buying small arms from the United States. We bought the Slicksoa, and now we are getting in, thank God, today possibly it's been agreed that about almost 7 lakh rifles will be made, as you said, at Uttar Pradesh. And this is about 500,000 crores, which will be AK-203 state-of-the-art weapons, which are extremely important. We can't go along with the 5.56, and these will be made in India. Of course, we would be getting, before we get anything, we would be getting a small amount. I don't see the United States, doing anything. Yes, United States, what little that my own interactions with their military people have been is that everything is progressed in a case by case, very slowly.
Yes.
And I'm certain about it with both the experts sitting on my right and left, that they would agree that the US would not be doing anything. Yes, they may take some time to mull over the issue.
Ambassador Sibal, let's talk about the China angle. With America, as has been explained, it's unlikely that America would impose sanctions for India on defense deals done with Russia. There's already great cooperation on the Quad, and perhaps that's a balancing act that we will pull off. But when it comes to China, it goes into tricky terrain, doesn't it?
In what sense? Because of the strategic ties between Russia and China?
Exactly. The strategic ties between Russia and China, and India's very clear, strong position vis-a-vis China. Perhaps Russia's inability to come on board with how China is behaving in this area.
See, we should be a little clear-headed about this, I think, because Russia has become closer to China not because of India. They have become close to China because of pressure from US primarily and Europe. So they have had no choice but to strengthen ties with China as an economic partner. And also they have sold them a lot of technologies and a lot of arms, which indirectly is a cause of concern to us because of the China-Pakistan connection and the possibility of transfer of certain technologies and know-hows from China to Pakistan. Since we say that we will independently develop our ties with the United States, while we maintain very good ties with Russia, Russia can use the same argument that we will independently maintain very good ties with India, but we will not dilute our relationship with China because of India. But there's a separate dynamics of interest involved here. The best that we should expect and be largely satisfied with is that Russia remains neutral, as they have been. But consider 2 or 3 things which actually explain why Russia is more than neutral. Firstly, during the Ladakh standoff, there was some degree of pressure from China to halt additional arms supplies to India when our defense minister went to Moscow to ask for expediting certain defense material to India, but Russia responded very positively to this. Number 2, they're selling us the S-400. Now, they know that this S-400 is to beef up our defenses against China, but they're doing it. They have given us the nuclear propulsion technology. They're helping us with our own indigenous program, knowing fully well, and we have not made any secret of it, that we need this seaborne deterrent against China, and they are helping us there. So they are strengthening our defense capabilities. Now we are talking about additional Sukhois and additional T-90 tanks and the Kamov helicopter contract, which may or may not be signed during this visit. So they are beefing our capability, and they are beefing up this capability, knowing fully well that this is strengthening our capacities towards China. So it is a very subtle and nuanced game. And therefore, we should ourselves play it in a nuanced and subtle way, rather than in any simplistic way that looks, since we are close to China, therefore it's a problem.
Sure, no, of course. You know, when we do this show and this analysis, of course, we understand that the nuance goes beyond what can be explained, say, in a program like this. But the idea is also to communicate the broad contours of what is going on to our viewers, which is what we're attempting to do today. Mr. Joshi, in that context, where do you see the tailwind for the Indo-Russian relationship going forward? What are the points of partnership where we can strengthen? Because it's not just about defense. We have increasingly been making purchases from the United States and others as well. So Russia has for long not been our primary supplier anymore.
Well, you see, I'd like to take off from where Ambassador Sibal left off. The question of a nuanced relationship. Please understand that Russia is also a great power. India is also a great power. For certain circumstances, as Ambassador Sibal explained, the Russians have had to lean towards China. But when they lean towards China, they're also aware that if they maintain a certain level of ties with India, that can create a kind of a dynamic in which they don't get entrapped completely into one relationship. So strong India-Russian ties also help strong China-Russia ties from their perspective. So the point I'm really trying to get at is that the Russians would be happy if we become a stronger country. And as Ambassador Sibal pointed out, one system he didn't mention, the BrahMos 2, which is nothing but a Zircon missile. No one will give you the technology for a hypersonic vehicle, but the Russians are giving it to us. Meaning you may call it BrahMos 2, you may call it anything, but it's in fact, it's a Zircon missile, which Putin just introduced into the Russian service last month, if I'm not mistaken. So what I'm saying is that this is a dynamical relationship. Now, the point is to strengthen the economic part of it. That is that there must be stronger basis on the economic side, and some work has been done. Ambassador Sibal referred to the Chennai-Vladivostok corridor. There is another corridor, the International North-South Transportation Corridor, which goes through Iran. Now, that is why I mentioned Iran earlier. Things are happening there. The JCPOA could come back on track. If it comes back on track, Iran opens up. Iran is a huge power. Not many people realize that in terms of area, Iran is 2/3 the size of India. So it's a pretty big country. It's very central to the security of West Asia, security and economic prosperity. And if we can get the international north-south corridor going, the main reason why it has not taken off is because of sanctions on Russia and Iran. Both of them have been sanctioned by Western countries. And both of them are interested in breaking out of those sanctions. And I think India can play a role. That would be a good riposte to the Belt and Road Initiative. The Belt and Road Initiative goes east-west in the Asian continent. The international north-south transportation corridor will go north-south.
Absolutely, absolutely. So there is a lot more than meets the eye with the Indo-Russian relationship. A lot of nuance there with, a balancing act between the US-Russia relationship on one end and the proximity between Russia and China. Thank you so much to all of you for joining us on the show today and giving us your perspective on this as we track the latest from the Indo-Russia summit.